Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
Hi, and welcome to episode 87 of the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. Today, we talk to Beth Heller, who is very open with her own story and journey with infertility and how that led her to become the co-founder and co-director of Pulling Down the Moon. Beth is a mother and a yoga teacher. Her niche and her passion is yoga for fertility. All of the links and topics that we cover today are at theconnectedyogateacher.com/87. I'm Shannon Crow, a mother of three, a yoga teacher, and a consultant and trainer for yoga teachers. Today's episode is a great example of how a yoga teacher has niched down, using the struggle that she faced and sharing the yoga that helped her along the way. Niche work isn't easy, I get that. As a new yoga teacher, I was just trying to get enough students into my classes. I felt like there was so much to learn on the yoga side of things, and also as an entrepreneur. Let me clarify, I was an entrepreneur before I became a yoga teacher. I created and managed a weekly farmers market for 5 years while my children were little. Many of you probably don't know that story. I was growing 2 acres of vegetables and I sold them every week at the farmers market. I also invited other vendors in to sell their fresh produce and homemade items. It was such a great learning experience in marketing. I remember feeling like marketing the other vendors was easier than marketing for myself. I also remember people getting to know me at the market and then showing up for my yoga classes when I added that into the mix. I was really building relationships, and it was through seeing people face to face and building that know, like, and trust. I have brought all that I have learned from the various jobs I've had over the years to what I do today. And if someone were to tell me that I would be hosting a podcast for yoga teachers, I'm not sure I would have believed them. I couldn't see my niche until it all started to make sense. And so this podcast is here to support you. Even if you don't know what your niche work is, or if you know what your niche work is, but you want to refine it a little bit more. I'm so happy to share what I've learned. I'm also thrilled to interview experts, like today, talking to Beth, so that I can ask questions and we can learn together. Today's episode is great for any yoga teacher who's working with students or friends who are dealing with infertility. Also for those of you who are teaching prenatal yoga or yoga to those who are at the age and stage of pregnancy. Because so often our students are not coming and telling us if they're dealing with infertility. They might have heard that yoga is helpful, and so they're showing up to class, but they're not always sharing. And if you feel like all of those things are not you as a yoga teacher, stay with me here. It's also for those of you who are interested in hearing how a yoga teacher has created a really supportive space in her class in a very particular niche. I really love how Beth shares how she creates a supportive space where information is shared, and also there is a place for people to share their own journey with infertility. So this can be translated into a lot of different classes. I know some of you have niched right down. Some of you have talked to me about having a class that's really niched into an area of struggle for people. Overall, this podcast was created for all of the yoga teachers out there who are serving others by sharing yoga. It is here for you every week between the classes, workshops, and trainings that you are teaching or attending, so that you can connect to information, ideas, and a supportive community of other yoga teachers. Before we meet Beth, let's hear from Megan over at Schedulicity.
Hello, Connected Yoga Teachers. This is Megan with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. Online booking is so easy. One common concern is that clients may forget that they have booked with you. Your time is valuable, so we have tools to help you protect yourself from no-shows. You can enable text reminders for your clients in case they aren't checking their email regularly. You also can set up your offerings to be held with a credit card number, deposit, or full prepayment. Then you can create a no-show policy to let your clients know that they may be charged if they don't show up. Just as we can take measures to protect your body from injury, we can make moves to protect your schedule from no-shows.
Thank you so much, Megan. I love how Schedulicity works to remind my students about the classes and workshops they've signed up for. I also love that I can choose to take full payment, partial payment, or have students pay nothing or hold their spot with their credit card. I actually don't know of another scheduling software that offers this. Alrighty, connected yoga teachers, let's dive in and welcome Beth Heller, our guest today. As I said, Beth is a co-founder of Pulling Down the Moon. She also has a degree in human nutrition, and she spent 4 years working as a nutrition researcher. Beth started to see the connection of body and mind when she worked for a women's walking program in that research position that she had. She saw the impact that movement was having with women. They were becoming stronger, less anxious, and less depressed. Beth started yoga in 1998 as a stressed-out graduate student who was really wanting to start a family, but was unable to conceive. Today, you're going to hear Beth talk about her own journey to yoga, how it helped her to regain her period and get pregnant, and how it held and supported her through loss. Beth founded Pulling Down the Moon with fellow yogi Tammy Quinn after going through her own infertility, a miscarriage, and the stillbirth of her daughter at 38 weeks. This is where Beth says that she found the true value of yoga, and she wanted to share it with others. Beth is a member of the International Association of Yoga Therapists and the American Society for Reproductive Medicine. She teaches yoga in classes and in one-on-one instruction throughout the Chicagoland area. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, Beth. It's great to have you here today.
Thanks so much, Shannon. I'm excited to be here.
Tell us a little bit about your journey specifically to yoga and fertility and pulling down the moon.
Yeah, sure. So, when I started yoga for fertility, I don't think it was a thing at that point. It was part of my own journey. I was one of those women who took 7 years and 5 pregnancies to get 2 kids, right? So I wandered in to a yoga class as a stressed out graduate student. Over 20 years ago, I was amenorrheic. I hadn't had my periods. I was burning the candle at both ends. And, at the end of class, I decided that this was going to be life-changing for me. Walked out, bought a book, bought a mat, started to do yoga at home. It wasn't quite the thing it is now during this time. And really found that once I started to practice yoga, it did have an impact on my physiological system. A couple months after starting to practice yoga, I got my periods back for the first time in 4 years. Shortly after that, I conceived. It was, kind of miraculous and exciting. I thought I had the whole thing figured out. Shortly after that, I had my first miscarriage, and I think it was in that moment where I realized I didn't have it all figured out that I really understood what yoga was doing for me. It was there at the time that all the traditional answers weren't quite working for me.
Then yoga was there to support you mean with your miscarriage?
Absolutely. It gave me a different way to think about things. It gave me some tools to use to, brush myself off and get back on the horse and, try again. And, after I had that first miscarriage, I ended up entering a yoga teacher training program. We had to write a thesis. As part of that thesis, of course, I don't know, what your experience is with infertility, but frankly, once you start to have trouble having a baby, it becomes this all-consuming journey. So, of course, I wrote my thesis on yoga for fertility because I knew I come from a science background. I have a master's degree in nutrition. I was really interested. I worked with perimenopausal women. I'm interested in the endocrine system. So I knew there was an endocrine component to my fertility issues. And, I just went back in and thought, I know yoga can help balance our bodies. Let's really see what it might do in terms of reproductive function. So really that's where it all started. I then stumbled upon my current business partner, Tammy Quinn. She was teaching at the same yoga studio. I went through a long journey with my teacher training, ended up getting pregnant, going through a a wonderful, healthy pregnancy that, again, tragically ended in a loss. I had a stillbirth at 38 weeks. And Tammy, who went on to be and is now my business partner of 15 years, was supposed to cover my yoga classes during my maternity leave. And instead, this opened up this very interesting conversation about what was a very, very, and still is private topic, where each of us shared. She had fertility issues. She had fertility twins. And we both felt together that there needed to be this resource for women where they could come and practice and use yoga in very specific ways to support the fertility journey. So really has led me every step of the way.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that we just heard the quick Coles Notes version of it, and you said that yoga really supported you, but it's still like 2 losses in that amount of time. And like you said, over 7 years, and every menstrual cycle then being that loss is quite a journey. And what a gift then that you offer to other people that you work with.
Thank you. Yeah, it definitely is a calling. And, Tam and I started that first Yoga for Fertility class 15 years ago. This is our 15th year teaching. And literally thousands at this point of women have come and taken this course and really found it, I think, to be as life-changing as that journey was for me and probably was for you, that first moment you met yoga and really deeply understood what it could do in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like you said, it wasn't really even a thing when you were doing it, but you knew that it was.
I'm old.
I'm sure you're not. My kids, told me the other day, there was someone as old as you who was teaching her. Old like you, they said.
I look around and the people that I studied with are now kind of in that older generation of yoga teachers, and it just makes me smile.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are the wise ones. So then tell us then what Pulling Down the Moon offers now. When you said there's this program for women and you've worked with so many women now in their fertility journey, what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So when Tammy and I came together to create the Yoga for Fertility class, we wanted to make sure that it had an emphasis not just on the physical elements of yoga, but also on some of the deeper practices and philosophies that had been so impactful for reframing our own journeys. So we created a 6-week class that is 90 minutes each session, and it really is kind of a progressive journey, kind of deeper into the practices of yoga. Each week we do an asana practice that supports the goals of fertility, which would be, balancing the nervous system, massaging and stimulating the internal organs in a way that's safe for somebody who might be doing medicated fertility treatment. We wanted to, just the way that yoga actually trains you to respond differently to stressors. But we also wanted to have a sharing component, a discussion component, and a teaching component. And so that 6-week class is the one we've been teaching for these last 15 years. And we actually have 2 research studies that have been done with this program that we're quite proud of. We partnered early on with Fertility Centers of Illinois, which is a very large fertility practice here in Chicago. And one of the fertility doctors, Dr. Jennifer Hirschfeld-Citron, is interested in that connection between fitness, stress, fertility. And while the whole relationship between stress and fertility is very controversial, what we do know is that the journey when somebody's trying to conceive, whether they're going through multiple losses or whether they just can't get pregnant and have to do IVF, IUI, et cetera, comes with an intense amount of stress. Equal to studies have shown that this journey, the fertility journey, in particular IVF, is equal to the stress a woman experiences when she's diagnosed with cancer. Mm-hmm. So it's this really profound crisis state. And I don't think many people understand that, really, like the profound crisis. So long story short, Dr. Hirschfeld-Citron reached out to me and said, hey, we've been partnering on holistic care for fertility. What if we took this yoga program and we started to do some research? So we did the first study in 2016, and we took all comers. We took women, no matter what part of the fertility journey they were in. They could have been with their OB. They could have been on their fourth IVF. It just didn't matter. It was somebody who self-selected as going through fertility. And we had them go through our 6-week program. And it was really cool what we found. We found that the women who took the yoga practice had a decrease of greater than 20% in their anxiety levels as measured by the state trait measure. So they had this decrease, and it was significantly greater than the change in the control subjects. So that made us go, wow, just in 6 weeks, 90-minute classes once a week for 6 weeks, we were able to impact women's anxiety levels by more than 20%, decreasing them by more than 20%.
That's amazing.
So yeah, so we were blown away by that. And it got a lot of attention. And for the fertility physician who may or may not think that this is going to increase pregnancy rates or may not necessarily buy into what I believe, which is that yoga definitely helps support fertility processes in the body. What they know is they're going to have a patient in their clinic who is 20% less anxious, which means it's going to be, there's going to be better adherence to protocols. There's going to be better communication. That person might not drop out of treatment because they're feeling overwhelmed. So I think the medical community really was interested in this finding for that reason, because they feel that if they can keep a woman, if a woman's less stressed, she's going to stay in treatment longer.
Yeah. So can I ask a few questions about the study? Is this the one that maybe I read? Was this the one that was done online and in person as well, or is that a different one?
No, that was a follow-up study. So we just completed and presented at the American Society for Reproductive Medicine conference this past October of 2017, our second study. And that was where we took women who had failed an IVF cycle. So this is the population that is most at risk of dropping out of treatment. And they were able to self-select into online or in-person yoga classes. And again, we saw that greater than 20% decrease in both the online and in-person groups, anxiety over that 6-week period.
This is what really caught my eye. One, I'm always interested in fertility yoga because I teach a prenatal yoga teacher training that includes that in. But two, because I work with so many yoga teachers who teach online, and oftentimes they're wondering if it's effective. And so your study, actually, it was higher for the online group, which I'm curious. Do you have any thoughts of why that was?
I have a couple thoughts, and I wanted to clarify that this class, although it was online, it still had a very, very personal connection. So everything that we were doing in the in-person class, we were doing in an online video webinar. So there was the sharing of stories. There was what we actually didn't do together was the asana practice. The group used our yoga DVD for the asana practice. So they practiced on their own for the asana portion.
Okay.
The class was what we call the discussion and the teaching portion, where we introduce the concept, we have discussion, we check in. So that said, I think I lost my train of thought. You had asked me,
it's okay.
The reason it was higher. I think that one interesting finding of that study was that the women who were in the online group had higher anxiety rates to begin with when we compared them to the in-person group. So there may have been something about being, that anxious. You're already more anxious maybe than the others. And then it's such a relief. It's such a relief that you're able to share, connect.
Yes.
Talk, which we all know, Sangha, huge part of yoga, right? And anyone that doesn't acknowledge that, collection of like-minded people coming together and supporting each other being a huge part of the efficacy of yoga, just needs to look at this study, because I think it really bears that out.
Right. And it's interesting also that you allowed them to choose whether they wanted to do it online or in person. And I feel like people with a higher level of anxiety would be more apt to choose an online one. It feels safer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's less body image issues. Not that I saw any significant difference in my students, but I think if somebody has, body image issues, if somebody doesn't imagine themselves as being the yoga type, they're going to be less likely to go to a studio and walk into a class. So I felt like it really broke down some barriers for people. We had a lot of moms that had had children before that they were having trouble. They had secondary infertility. They couldn't get away to go to a class, couldn't drive into Chicago to take the class, whatever. There were a lot of different reasons. But I think it is interesting that the online group did have that higher anxiety to start with.
Yeah. So what were the numbers like for the 2016 study and then the more recent one? How many women were you working with?
Yeah, we took 80 women through that first study. There were about 55 that did yoga, and I think there were 79. And I'm going off the top of my head on this, Shannon. So, around 55 in the yoga and maybe 25 in the control group. So that first yoga program study had two groups. We had an intervention group and we had a control group. The second study did not have a control group. It encompassed 26 in-person people and 20 online participants.
Okay. And then the control group from the first, did they do any part of it or did they just...
They just did a pre and post.
Right.
We pre-tested them. We waited 6 weeks and we post-tested them. Right.
I just love that this study exists. I use it when I'm talking with yoga teachers who are looking at specializing in yoga for fertility. Can you tell us, if someone came to us, we're a yoga teacher, and someone has read an article like this one, seen a study, or has just heard yoga is good for fertility, go find a yoga teacher. I mean, I would love to see people finding someone who's trained in fertility yoga, but say they live out where there aren't as many yoga teachers. What would you say those yoga teachers need to know going into teaching someone who is on a fertility journey?
Therein is the challenge. It really, most of our teachers have had a life experience of fertility challenges, right? So we're walking in, we get it, we know it. And that's just that's a pulling down the moon thing. It's in terms of the people that we want. And if it's not somebody who's had that life, and I'm not saying by any stretch, and we've had, gifted teachers who've come to us and decided that they were really passionate about this. You don't have to have fertility experience, but it really does help to have it because it's an extremely intense area in which to work. Again, I go back to that area of, these women are in a level of crisis as somebody with a cancer diagnosis. On top of that, there is a huge amount to know from the medical side. What are the different treatments? What are the different drugs? You would really want to do your research to make sure you understand. Because honestly, Shannon, when I started out, I wasn't in a medicated journey. I was just thinking of all the good things yoga could do and how it can balance the nervous system, and all of that's really valid. But then you have to kind of filter that through that context of the clinic, of the medical fertility, and that go to a fertility clinic and watch the training videos on their website. Just start researching to get that medical side down, because I think that is important, especially because your students. I think one of the biggest parts of going to a yoga for fertility class is that your teacher knows what you're talking about.
Yes.
Everybody knows that somebody, really wants a baby, but it's really different when somebody knows, what an HSG test is and what it feels like. And if you had one yesterday, what we need to do. So it's one of those niche things.
It sure is. So you're saying the experience is one side, and that makes sense. I mean, I'm sure there are yoga teachers teaching yoga for fertility who have not had that. I have worked one-on-one with people because I specialize in yoga for pelvic health who are dealing with fertility issues. But I let them know, tell me what you're going through right now. And on many levels, I don't understand the medical side of things. I'm really solid in the pelvic health, but tell me what you're going through. It's kind of like asking more questions than anything. But I can see how this experience and then knowing the medical side. And then in terms of what does fertility yoga look like, what makes it different than a regular yoga class? Let's say if we took like a hot vinyasa flow class.
Doesn't look like that. And I don't have anything against hot vinyasa. I enjoy a good heated class, but fertility yoga isn't heated. Really, it's a practice that goes back to this firm commitment to using yoga to balance the nervous system, right? So it can have some vigorous elements of practice, but ultimately, it's not a workout. Fertility yoga is never a workout. You get stronger, obviously, and you get more flexible and all the wonderful benefits that come from any yoga practice. So we focus on balancing the nervous system. We adjust it to our class. We're avoiding deep folds and deep twists depending on where somebody is in their cycle. We are focusing on kind of that downward grounding flow of energy. So in that way, it's similar to a prenatal class. So many people are caught up in the heart and the head element of this journey. It becomes this all-encompassing, obsessive kind of 24/7 experience. Like, how am I going to get pregnant? What's the silver bullet? That, a good fertility yoga practice, I think, really works on grounding. We talk a lot about apana energy in our book, and really connecting back with the feet, maybe dialing back on a lot of sun salutations. Obviously all the things that you would think of course, hip openers to increase blood flow to the pelvis, an emphasis on that. Emphasis on poses that stimulate the digestive system, stimulate Agni, stimulate the ability for the body to assimilate the food and, really get the nutrients out of the food that we're eating. Detoxification poses, you're taking a ton of meds. And again, it's going to depend on the person in front of you. And when we teach a class, we really try to keep it to what's going to be safest for everybody in the room. And we might target here and there if we know somebody is going through this part of their cycle or they just had a failed IVF, we might tell them, hey, it's okay tonight if you want to, do some twisting, or here's a modification for you.
Right. So then you would offer that to that individual with the knowledge that you have. And so you had said also, as part of that is the discussion with the group. So what is the breakdown of your class in terms of asana and then that support side of things?
Oh, we do anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes of kind of lecture, just talking about different things. And then the conversation, it depends. We make sure we get at least 45 minutes of asana in every single class, and that includes a 10-minute shavasana. That's our guideline.
Right.
The conversation could go on for an hour and a half if we let it. So it's about 45 minutes teaching and conversation and 45 minutes asana.
Right. And you do the conversation before the asana?
Yeah, usually.
Yeah.
It depends on, and there's latitude. It's usually first.
Right. And how do you deal with when someone in your fertility group then is pregnant? Do they move to a prenatal yoga class? Do they stay there a little bit longer? I can imagine that would bring a lot of emotions up on both sides.
That's such a great question, Shannon. We usually will have people, if they want, say they get a positive beta, so the positive pregnancy test, and they want to, obviously they would continue through the session that they're in. We feel very confident the practice that we do is safe. It's safe through the first trimester and even through the whole pregnancy. Be totally safe practice for them to do. Sometimes people want to continue and repeat the class, and we do that. But in that case, I will generally talk to that person, and it's not that frequently that people want to take the class again after they've gotten a positive pregnancy test. But sometimes, somebody's had a lot of miscarriages, or somebody's really, for a lot of women, getting a positive pregnancy test is just the beginning of the hell because, they've had 2 miscarriages before. So yes, they're excited that they're pregnant again, but it's really the next 12 weeks that are going to be the hard part.
Right.
So in that case, we just usually talk to the student and say, yeah, we'd love to have you do this, but if here's the way we need to be really respectful of the other people in the class. And, if you share your story and we know that you've had multiple, you've had losses. And so you're very anxious and you're just very mindful about how that fits into the group. And you remember how, maybe you felt, in those cases, I think I can only remember one case ever where we ever had any feedback about having somebody continue on once pregnant in the class.
Right. Yeah. And I would imagine, I just remember a friend of mine was dealing with infertility and had been trying to get pregnant for 3 or 4 years. And I didn't want to tell her that I was pregnant.
Yeah.
Thank goodness she got pregnant 3 months after me. And
oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, yay, we can do the journey together.
Yeah. Fertility just puts pressure on both, not just the person experiencing the infertility, but compassionate friends that want to support. But, you might be more of a painful, presence at a certain amount of time until that person's ready. And I think that, I think that's very true. It's a tough line to walk.
If someone is a yoga teacher or yoga student listening to this and they are in Chicago, they can definitely come to Pulling Down the Moon. Where are you located?
Sure. We're at 770 North LaSalle Street on the 8th floor, so right downtown. And then we also have yoga classes up in Highland Park, which is a north suburb of Chicago.
And then if they can't make it in person, do you do online so that they can attend from anywhere?
Yeah, if someone's having fertility issues, they can definitely attend. One of the things, and I am always so sad saying this, is we get a lot of requests from yoga teachers to come and attend a class and observe classes or shadow or come in. And I love it, and I would love to be able to do that, but there's so much confidentiality involved in these classes. It's like a really safe space. So that's something that we have not been and still don't do at Pulling Down the Moon. And it's kind of tough because I'd love to be able to do that, but out of just understanding for the gals that are coming in this state of crisis, it's something we have not done.
Yeah. Oh, I can see that. If there was someone who was outside of the Chicago area and they were a yoga student, would they be able to work online then, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, if there was somebody who wanted to take the class online, it's from anywhere in the country.
Okay. Anywhere outside of the country as well?
Yeah, I've had people, it depends on the time zone, if they can make it work. I've had people do it. I had someone from London in my last class.
Right. Oh, that's good to know.
Poor thing was practicing at 12 midnight, but she did it.
Wow. Good for her. And then if someone is looking for a yoga class and they can't make it to your online one, they can't make it to another one, but they really want to do yoga for fertility, what would you suggest that they seek out?
I think they should start by, Googling obviously they probably Googled their local area, because there are yoga for fertility classes here and there all over. You probably know this because of what you do. They are there. They're just not everywhere. So I would start first with a little Google search. And then, you could go to Vimeo. There are some good yoga DVDs on Vimeo for fertility. We have a DVD and book, and, there are some options out there for people.
What is the name of your book?
Fully Fertile.
All right. Oh, yes, I've read it.
Fully Fertile companion DVD. And actually, Fully Fertile is great. And this is a fun thing, Shannon. It's set up as a 12-week program to help balance and help, nurture fertility naturally. And we've had many people offer this or just do this book as a book club. And actually the back of the book has a book club option. So that's one thing. If somebody's really passionate about yoga for fertility or this idea of being more holistic about fertility, they can start a book group in their area
Oh, that's so cool.
Advertise it at their local fertility clinic, and then they just meet at a local coffee shop. They can, use the DVD. They read the book. There's discussion questions, and we've had many of those happen across the country over the last, I think it's been about 8 years since we wrote that book, but that's been a way that it has been used.
Oh, what a powerful thing for people to do when they can't be right there or can't do an online class with you. I remember reading through a bunch of different fertility books, and that one I was like, oh, this is really applicable, really helpful.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice. And we have had yoga teachers over the years that have used that book to kind of structure their yoga for fertility classes. Or to kind of get, maybe not verbatim, but they've done the book group kind of format and then partnered that with their take on the fertility practice, the asana practice.
Mm-hmm. So from your experience in dealing with infertility, what would you tell people who are supporting someone dealing with that? So maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a yoga student. What are some things that are helpful to say and to not say?
I think more than anything, it's just to reach out and say, I'm so sorry that what you're going through. I'm here for you. Just let me know what you need. And I think that's the most important thing. I think the woman and couple that's going through the fertility journey has a lot of guilt about not being able to go to baby showers, not wanting to run into that friend who's pregnant, it's all the stuff that you want to do, but you just can't because you're going to start to sob, or you're going to have a panic attack, or it's going to send you in, spinning off into space. So I think just keeping the door open very gently and just saying, I totally understand, I'm here if and when you need me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just putting the ball in the fertility, the couple, the person who's experiencing fertility, putting the ball in their court is where I would start personally.
And just to confirm, because I hear what you're saying, and when you say, I totally understand, you're saying, I totally understand if you can't come to this event or this thing, or you're kind of backing away, not saying, I totally understand what it's like, what you're dealing with.
No. Yeah. I'm so sorry what you're going through. Just want you to know that I'm here, if and when you need anything from me.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I think sometimes we want to fill the space and we want to say more. And I know in my own life, raising my children, there were times where we got into some medical issues with our last one, and it was like we were having a miscarriage, but miraculously didn't. And there were a lot of comments that came out in that time of people really meaning well. And just trying to fill the conversation space. But really, it's just, I'm sorry you're in this right now.
I'm so sorry you're going through this. I can't imagine. I would love to do anything I can for you. Just let me know, if and when you need anything from me. Boom. Yeah. And you find that is the one thing that allows somebody to open up. They might feel safe when they get that or you might get an email and be okay if you get that email back or you get the message back. Hey, there's really nothing right now. I'll reach out. And then just kind of respecting that.
Mm-hmm. So true. Is there anything up and coming really exciting happening there? Are you doing other studies, or are you just keeping with all of the work that you're doing?
We don't have a study coming up. I'd really like to do one eventually looking at pregnancy rates, but it's hard to get, there's no funding for this, Shannon. It's not like you can patent the yoga medicine so it's hard. Most of our medical research is funded by pharmaceutical companies. So the idea that we could have, a randomized control study that actually looked at pregnancy outcomes or really, really dug into the health benefits or the fertility benefits of yoga seems so far away for me. But I keep praying. I do. I keep praying and visualizing. And I know that the physicians that we work with in Chicago, they're very interested and very supportive of the impact of yoga on their patients. So I anticipate that there will be more to come. I just don't know what that is right now.
Right. Well, thank you so much for the work that you do. What is the website that people would go to find out more?
It's pullingdownthemoon.com.
Thank you so much for your time today, Beth.
Thank you, Shannon. It was great.
Thank you so much, Beth, for all of your insight, your wisdom, and for really opening up and sharing your story and how it led to you to sharing this yoga for fertility. It's a real gift that you've given us today. I also want to add a resource, and this was my key takeaway talking to Beth, and I feel like it was just an add-on from a resource that I have found very helpful. As some of you may know, I used to teach weekly prenatal yoga classes. And way back when I was a brand new prenatal yoga teacher, before I had taken training in infant loss and fertility in those specialty areas, I had a student come to me at the end of class, and as I was locking up, she came up to me in tears, and all she said was, "We lost the baby." I was just standing there speechless for a minute. And then I feel like I just sort of blurted out, "I'm so sorry. If there's anything you need, please let me know." And I felt like I was fumbling over my words. She left pretty quickly, and I just remember feeling powerless and like I didn't know what to say. There were a lot of things running through my mind, and I really didn't know if I was saying the right thing. And so I want to share a resource for you that really summarizes what to say in that moment, and more important, what not to say to someone who has experienced miscarriage. I want to give a huge shout out of thanks to Devin McGinnis for this resource. So she has a website called unspokengrief.com, and I'll link to this really specific blog post that she wrote. It's called Words Women May Find Hurtful After Miscarriage. As I shared while I was talking with Beth today, I've had people say things to me that felt really hurtful when Sage was a baby. So a little more on that story. My water broke at 27 weeks. I thought I was having a miscarriage. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and Sage was born at 29 weeks. In that time where I was sort of waiting between when my water had broke and I was waiting for Sage to be born but trying to hold off, a very sweet friend who meant well came in and said to me, "Well, at least you have 2 healthy boys at home." It wasn't helpful. She meant well. I know looking back now that she was trying to help me to see the bright side of facing a loss. And this is where I started to look at what I had actually said to people in the past, or what I was thinking when I heard of a loss. And this is why I think this list, this resource from Devin, is so amazing. It really gets into the common things that people say and then why it isn't helpful. So for sure, check that out. And just as a finish to that story, so we were so incredibly lucky with Sage. We spent a long time in the hospital. Like I said, she was born at 29 weeks. She was 2 pounds, 11 ounces, so really tiny. She dropped down to 2 pounds, 7 ounces. And again, there were a lot of things that happened, and a lot of fear came up for me that she wasn't going to make it. And in that time, I feel like yoga really held me. And it wasn't asana. It was more of a deep inner strength and resilience that I had cultivated through my yoga practice. So I wanted to share that. And as some of you know, Sage is now 13 and such a light. Many of our family and friends refer to her as the miracle baby still, and we just give a lot of gratitude around the time of her birthday for sure. So there's a little personal story that maybe you didn't know, and I want to reach out to all of you who are dealing with any and all struggles. Maybe they're around parenting, pregnancy, and fertility. Maybe there's something else. And I just want you to know that I'm here holding space for you. And if you want to continue a conversation, a great place to do that is to reach out into our private Facebook group for yoga teachers, because a supportive community can make such a difference. So if you're not already a member there, come and join us. Go to theconnectedyogateacher.com. On the homepage, you'll see the join button. Also, I want to tell you about some exciting news. The dates for Mama Nurture 2019 have been confirmed. We will be both in Meaford, Ontario, Canada, and Bermuda in April. So the Bermuda one is more of an intensive. The Meaford one goes over a few months. We cover both fertility yoga and infant loss and grief as part of the prenatal yoga teacher training because it is such an important part of this work. I also wanted to share a review from our online pelvic health course and tell you some big, exciting news about that course. First, let me share the review. Yale wrote to me in an email and said, "I wanted to thank you so much for this online course. With my busy schedule, it's hard for me to get to in-person trainings, and these are easily accessible video links, and they were perfect for me. Also, your teaching skills are amazing, so clear, and you make the material interesting and relatable, so I really appreciate that. I'm super excited to bring this into my classes, especially because I'm starting to teach in my pelvic floor physical therapist's office. I definitely feel confident to start bringing the material in, but want to continue my education and deepen my understanding about this topic." Thank you so much, Yale, for sending this email to me and then saying, yes, I could share it on the podcast. It really means a lot. And now for the exciting news. I have been wanting to update this online training for a while now. You guys know that I'm super passionate about pelvic health. I'm learning all the time, and I want to add in the new learning that I've done with more videos of poses and a little more help on how to put together a class or a series. So I'm going to be updating the training this winter. You can hold me to that. When the snow around here gets really deep and I can't travel very far, that's what I'll be doing. And the best news is that anyone who has signed up for the training will have lifetime access to any and all of the updates. So if you're thinking that you might want to sign up for this, I would say do that before the update comes out. That way you get two versions at a lower price because the price is going to go up a little in the new version. And if you've signed up, then you get both. So go to theconnectedyogateacher.com and look under training and events. Thank you to our team over here at The Connected Yoga Teacher. This episode is possible because of all of you. And also huge thanks to you, our listener, for tuning in, for sharing the podcast with other yoga teachers, and for really doing the amazing work that you're doing. Okay, Connected Yoga Teachers, have an amazing week. Stay connected to self, to your practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up.